Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Peaceful Way podcast. So this episode, it started out as just kind of a regular 30, 40-minute episode. I was going to write maybe 3,000 words or so. And 3,000 words turned into 4,000, 4,000 turned into 6,000, 6,000 turned into 8,000. And I realized this was going to have to be a much bigger project than I originally had anticipated. That being said, what I'm going to be writing about and releasing episodes on is about the intelligence community and many of the abuses and corruption that goes on with intelligence agencies. So, this first episode is just going to be a quick one. It'll be the prologue. And I'm just going to sort of tee up the rest of the episodes. I'm going to try and release the next part fairly quickly. I almost have it completed, so it should be ready to go not too long after this one. Anyways, this is turning into, like I said, a very big project, a lot of work. It's a passion project, no doubt, but one thing that would make it really worth my while is if all of you guys who listen to this show, if you go, a couple things you can do for me. You can go rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Generally, Apple and Spotify are the two big ones, and rates and reviews on those platforms help me get picked up by the algorithm, and it puts me in front of more potential listeners. So that would be a huge thank you if you could take a couple minutes just to do that. Another thing, if you think someone would be interested in this content, if you think even a particular topic that I cover either in this episode or other episodes, feel free to share it. That would be also awesome. Share the episode. I do also have, I don't love asking for money or anything, but if you did want to send a tip my way or something, in the description of the show, there will be ways you can financially support if you are so inclined. Again, the biggest thing I'm asking for, though, is just rates and reviews and sharing the show. That would be really awesome. Okay, let's get into it.
Intelligence community are, quote, furious and disgusted by the prospect of abandoning thousands of Afghan allies as President Biden sticks to the August 31st evacuation deadline. That's according to a former U.S. intelligence official who declined to be named.
Sobering talk on Capitol Hill today. The heads of the U.S. intelligence community laid out the security threats currently facing the United States.
The director of national intelligence and the head of the FBI talked about cyber threats and North Korea's nuclear weapons.
Today, the leaders of the U.S. intelligence community testified to Congress for what's called an annual threat assessment and painted major dangers posed by North Korea, ISIS, and to U.S. election security. Some of their testimony highlighted the differences between President Trump's policies and the intelligence community's assessments.
In the intelligence community, there's no longer any debate about Russia's interference. There's a widely held belief that the aim to help Trump came from the very top.
This is a covert influence campaign that I think.
Join me in a thought experiment. Imagine you live in a beautiful suburban neighborhood, outfitted with a lake, lush parks, and all the amenities you could ever want. The roads are perfectly paved. There is no trash on the sidewalks. Vandalism and vagrancy are non-existent. Everything looks great on the surface, but there are a few sinister exceptions. Many of your neighbors spy on each other. They set up hidden cameras all over your house and yard. They go through your mail, they observe your eating habits, sleep cycles, and sexual behavior. If someone is suspected of breaking the community rules, they may be kidnapped in the middle of the night and tortured in the Johnson's basement down the street. If a member of the neighborhood gets too out of line, they might be executed with a car bomb or a suspicious drowning in their pool. Did they deserve it? Was there a trial with evidence brought forth proving their guilt? No, but you should just take their word for it. It's for your own good. Some members may even plant false evidence or commit a horrific crime and blame it on someone else in order to forcibly remove residents who have been having parties past 10 p.m. or don't clean up after their dog. Sure, they get it wrong sometimes, but it would be total anarchy if the system did not work this way. Do you want to make parameters around what is and is not acceptable community rules? No problem. Simply make your request to the community association, and they might respond in 15 years, then form a commission to study the problem for another 5 years, then summarily deny your request, stating community security. If you would like to know more about why some members took such drastic action, well, you can file a request to audit them, but in the unlikely event that you are not denied, you will be given a 20,000-word document with only 7 words that have not been redacted. Again, community security and all that. When I think of what makes a group of people a community, what often comes to mind is things like working together in love and respect for a common goal. It is open, collaborative, and works for the good of the whole. Perhaps a church or neighborhood or even hobby enthusiasts come to mind. The very antithesis of a community would be the previously described scenario. You would, I think rightly, view this as a sort of open-air prison, a panopticon that will leave you paranoid and suspicious of everyone and everything. It's like a hate factory, which churns out radical and violent extremists on an assembly line of abuse and trauma. Yet, when it comes to references of the global spying apparatus, which is comprised of a Frankensteinish mix of public and private institutions, they are often spoken of as a quote-unquote community, as if all they did was play in softball leagues and go to wing nights on Tuesdays. Before we get ahead of ourselves, though, let's define our terms. It would behoove us not to address an often mistaken understanding of the words intelligence community. When you hear this term thrown around on the news, you may think it's some colloquialism, referring to a loose affiliation of United States government agencies. But it's actually something much more concrete and specific than that. On December 4th, 1981, U.S. President Ronald Reagan signed Executive Order 12333, which established the United States Intelligence Community, TM, a federation of all the major intelligence agencies in the country. This was in order to centralize these organizations, to have more control over the national security and intelligence gathering goals of the United States. The IC sits under the leadership of the sitting Director of National Intelligence, a U.S. government cabinet position. It even has its own flag and seal. To be clear, we're not talking about a group of people that voluntarily get together for a lively discussion on all things national security. The IC is a legally recognized arm of the United States government. So don't be fooled when talking heads wax poetically about all the experts in the field that come from the quote-unquote intelligence community. The IC is just like any other self-interested corporation or government department that is primarily motivated by more profits and ever-expanding budgets. So let's be a bit more blunt about the nature of this so-called community. The modern-day intel agencies which exist in the United States and around the world are absolute tax behemoths with black budgets, little to no accountability, and they act largely with judicial immunity, where much of the democratic safeguards put in place are window dressing at best. The people who work in these organizations have a revolving door between government and the private sector, floating from one three-letter agency to a tech company or weapons contractor, and then back again. It's easy to take for granted the fact that these agencies are as powerful as they are and have the vast and far-reaching surveillance capabilities that they do. It is true that for the most part, you have no interaction with them in your daily life. They are invisible to you, or at the very best, far in your peripheral vision. And that is just the way they like it. And even when they are caught in wrongdoing, which in most cases reveals only the tip of the iceberg of their operations, there are seldom any significant consequences. Sure, a lackey here and a grunt there may get thrown into prison as a sacrificial lamb to appease the public, but there's never any real reforms, and if there are, it's mostly cosmetic. Despite events like the Church Committee hearings, WikiLeaks, and the Snowden revelations, little to no action has been taken to reel in these agencies' power. In fact, since getting caught, their respective budgets have only ballooned in size to the point where it's hard not to wonder if they're being rewarded for bad behavior. So, let us explore how this so-called community behaves with some real-world examples, starting with the ATF, the FBI, and the Waco siege.